Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you some really easy painting techniques to make some beautiful Christmas cards, Christmas gift tags, and all you're going to need is some blobs of acrylic paint and a knife, fork and spoon from your cutlery drawer. Right, first I'm going to show you how to do this really cute mistletoe design. All you're going to need for this is a knife and a little tube of white paint and some light green, or any green will do really. I've actually got a bit of a mixture of paint today because I'm running low on everything thanks to lockdown. So I've got a tiny tube of light green watercolour and a little tube of white acrylic. This technique works with tubes of watercolour. It probably work well with oils, acrylics and probably even poster paint. The only paint that I could imagine it wouldn't work so well with would be the type of watercolour that you get in a solid block. But as long as you can squeeze out a little blob of the paint, then this technique will work fine. You can see here these examples that I've done. I have used previously these luggage tag type gift tags that I picked up really cheap from stationers. But if you haven't got any of these, you can make your own out of cardboard. Simply punch a hole in one end and thread a little bit of string or ribbon through, or you could just have some ordinary cardboard and fold in half to make a sort of a card type gift tag, or a greetings card, anything you fancy, but just have a practice with the technique, and you'll see what I mean about it being really easy. So let's move these out of the way a little bit. Right, I'm going to show you this technique using a little bit of black card now, because as you can see where we're using the white paint to make some little white mistletoe berries, it wouldn't show up on white paper any good. So as long as it's a different colour other than white, you're good to go. It's a natural sort of brown unbleached card, looks lovely, but let's see what it looks like on some black card as well. Now, as I said, all you're going to need some green, some white and an ordinary knife out of your cutlery drawer. The very first thing we've got to do is choose where our leaves are going to go. So I'm going to add, so we're going to need about 6 leaves, and what we're going to have to do for that is just add directly onto our page. We're going to squeeze out 1, 2, I think 6 little blobs of paint for our mistletoe leaves. Now, straight directly from the tube, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to lift this page up to the camera just so I can show you what I mean by blobs of paint. It really is a blob, a little 3D blob of paint that I've squeezed out, because we're going to need enough paint to drag it up and make our leaves with our knife. So here we go. Which way round shall I do that? Let's go that way. So the technique is this, really simple. You're going to get the end of your knife and imagining it's like a little lump of jam or something, and we're going to be just using the tip of our knife, we're going to be spreading it and dragging it upwards into a sort of an elongated teardrop shape. So here we go. Up. Now the only problem with this technique is it does take a very long time to dry, but it is worth it for the results you get. Now the benefits of using, I find, using cutlery instead of a paintbrush like a normal person, is you do have that extra added bit of control. And sometimes when you put a paintbrush to a page, especially if you're not particularly used to using them, they can bend in the wrong way and you end up not creating exactly what you thought you were going to. But we're all quite used to using cutlery, and where they're solid, if you're moving your paint in a certain direction, it's going to go where you want it to. And the other benefit that I find is that where you're dragging the paint, you'll sort of create some areas where the card underneath shows through, giving you a little bit of a sort of a 3D detail or a bit of shading for your leaves without actually having to do much work towards it at all. So dragging these blobs of paint upwards into that elongated teardrop shape, bringing them towards the centre and up, joining them all together in a little sprig of mistletoe. Okay, and once we've done that, it's time to add the berries. So we're going to be applying our paint directly to the paper. In the same way, we're just going to dab or dot a little blob of our paint on. So for our berries, just strategically dab a few on. 1, 2, 3, you make sure that the end of the tube is nice and clean, unlike what I did, then you could probably get a nicer round circle as well. There we go, that's a bit better. So we're using the end of the paint tube to actually print and dab our little berries on. There we go. Right, design number 2. I'm going to show you now how to do these holly leaves and berries. And again, just using 2 colours of paint. I've got some dark green in a little tube and some bright red. And for this one, we're going to need our spoon and our knife. Right. As we're not using white paint, this design will look lovely just straight onto some white card or paper. You can see what I did here, I just did it straight onto some white card. I've cut it out and backed it and stuck it to this gift tag. And I think it looks quite cute. So, the thing we're going to start with is the red holly berries. And we can either, like we did with the mistletoe berries, directly apply the paint to the paper, squeeze out some little blobs and sort of print with the end of our paint tube. But another technique that we can do is to apply a little blob to the back of our spoon, like so. You can just see just a little blob on the end, and we're going to use that to print. So we're going to make some little uniform berries. 1, 2, 3. You can see they've come out quite nice and circular, much easier than trying to get a nice even circle with a paintbrush, that's for sure. So next up, again, this is such an easy technique, we're going to do the holly leaves. If we add some holly leaves either side of our berries, like so, I'm going to do something similar to this design. I'm going to squeeze directly onto the paper, no need for a palette or any such thing today. I'm going to squeeze a little slug of my dark green paint either side of those red holly berries that I've just done. Now you're going to want quite a lot of paint, because again, same as with the mistletoe, we want enough paint to be able to spread about with our knife. Okay, as you can see, so starting off with a line. You might want to practice getting the shapes right first on a separate piece of paper, but we want to make these little U shapes all the way around to get the nice spiky edges of our holly leaf. So starting off on the inside point, I'm going to do a little U shape, C shape, curve shape coming out either way. And instead of painting the design onto the page, what we're doing again is spreading the paint that's already on the page around with our knife, sort of scraping and dragging like so. So we're going to have 3 points on each side of our holly leaf and 1 each end, roughly. And drag that paint around to where you need it. Drag it around. And then we're going to come into the end point up here. You haven't got to be perfect. As I say, nature isn't perfect, but if you get that nice curved shape between each point, it's certainly unmistakably a holly leaf. And then what you can do with the excess paint that we've still got is spreading that around with the end of our knife. And you can use your knife to create these areas of light and dark. And as you can see, where the knife will pull away the paint and expose a little bit of the paper underneath it, you almost get this effect of, it looks a little bit like a lino print or something, which is a very nice effect indeed. So there we go, there's one leaf. You can always go back to it, make them a little bit pointier, make the edges a little bit neater, and we'll do the same on the other side. Starting off nearest the berries. Doing our points like so, 1, 2, 3 on each side, and then joining them together in the middle for the end point. I think it's good fun to experiment anyway, and use some different things that we've got around the house to make some really nice art. So you haven't got to spend a fortune on professional paint brushes or anything like that. With some cutlery out of the kitchen drawer and some leftover bits of paint, we can make some lovely things. Go. Lastly, but by no means least, we are going to use our fork. We've used our knife and our spoon so far. Now we're going to use our forks and also possibly our knife a little bit to make these Christmas tree designs. As you can see here, this is one I made earlier. I've done it on some white paper, cut around it and fixed it to a little bit of thicker black card, folded over a little tab at the end, and that'll stick on a Christmas gift really, really nicely. You can flip it over, write the name. I think they work quite well, but really, really simple again. Similar technique. I'm going to show you how to do it now. So for this, we're going to need, again, some dark green, and very similar technique. We're going to be applying our paint directly onto our card or paper. So same as with the holly, I'm going to squish out a little bit of this dark green. You want a little bit of a little slug, a small green slug basically. I'm going to lift this page up and just show you again how much I've got on there. Don't want too much, but definitely 3D, definitely a blob, an elongated blob of paint. And we're going to get our fork. Now, dragging it up, thinking first about the size of the Christmas tree we want to do. I'm going to do one similar size to this. So, dragging the paint upwards a little, And then with our fork prongs, a similar technique to the last two, we're going to be dragging our paint either side to make evergreen branches. And it's not something that's going to happen straight away. It takes a little bit of time to work that paint. You might need to keep an eye on where your fork prongs are and where the lumps of paint are, and be sure to drag it where it needs to go. And as you keep working that paint, you'll see again we've got the forks scraping back the paint into some thinner areas. We can have some lighter lines and make a Christmas tree branch effect, pine needle effect. So you can turn your fork around and just use the one prong if you need to add a little bit of detail or a specific branch in somewhere, or all three or four of them at once. Gets the job done quickly. Now, thinking about the shape of your Christmas tree, it's a bit of a triangle shape. Wider at the bottom. You can also create a bit of a 3D effect by bringing these branches out and round. Like so. As I was experimenting drawing or painting some Christmas trees the other day with a fan brush, which was quite effective, but again, like I said earlier, with brushes, fan brushes, etc., they so they don't always go the way that you want them to if you're not that practiced with them. But with a fork, whichever way you're going to be pulling the fork, whichever way you're moving the paint, that's the way it's going to go. We haven't got any give, and we are able to make these lovely pine needle effects and patterns like so. And when you've done that as well, the next thing to do, if you've got a little bit of brown, by adding a small amount of brown to the end of our knife, and again spreading gently with the tip of our knife, very, very delicate Marmite spreading operation, we can add our tree trunk in. Like so. And something else you can do when it's dry, I always like saying this, here's one I made earlier. We can use our fork again to decorate our tree. If you've got some other colours of paint, some yellow and red works really, really well. If you apply the paint directly to the end of your fork prongs, like so, you can put it on a palette and then dip your fork in if you like, but I find that I get far less waste doing it this way. I do get through a lot of paint in my house, as I'm sure you can imagine. And using our fork, we're just going to dab this yellow across it and make some beautiful lights, some Christmas lights on our Christmas tree. So you may just want to do some yellow or gold, or you can do a range of colours. I'm going to add a little bit of red in there as well for this Christmas card. So see, just adding a little bit of red paint to the end of my fork and dotting across. Those just tiny little indications of some twinkly Christmas lights or decorations. And I'm pretty pleased with that. Thank you for joining me for today's Christmas crafts. I hope I've inspired you, especially that you don't need fancy art equipment and brushes to make some really, really lovely Christmas crafts. Here's a little selection of what we've done. See the Christmas trees, holly and berries, and the lovely mistletoe as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Wishing you a very Merry Christmas and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.